So the way that I got turned on to you was Joshca Bach was out there talking about you. And so before I did this interview, he's somebody that's known to my listeners, somebody I highly respect. I asked him, hey, tell me, what should I expect in this interview with Lee Cronin? And I want to quote this precisely. He said, he dares to be wrong, but he tends to be wrong in interesting and productive ways. And he always seems to ask himself what his theories allow him to build. You think that's a fair assessment?
Yeah, I would say so. That's really nice of him. Yeah, I mean, I don't mind being wrong, but the process of me telling you what I'm trying to do allows me to construct a validatory experiment or an invalidatory experiment, and we learn more. It's one of the things I've always learned as a scientist that I grew up when I was at school. I was in a kind of in the learning difficulties class, and I couldn't ever understand why I was there because I wanted to be smart, and it was a great source of disappointment when I kept learning I wasn't. So I kept going to the teacher and say, well, why am I dumb? And they were like, because you're dumb, right? And I was like, but why? And so I would say, and they say, well, you can't do this. And I was like, oh, I'll go away and do it. And say, well, am I still dumb? And they said, well, yeah, you're still a bit dumb, but that's good. So what I would do is that's the way I do science now is the universe tells me I'm dumb. So I do an experiment. Am I still dumb? And the universe might go, well, that kind of worked. So I think I think that a lot of people, a lot of scientists, my secret weapon is I'm happy to be dumb as long as I'm able to come up with new ideas that make me less dumb. And I think that is what science is. That's why hopefully one day I might be all right, an average scientist or whatever that is. Whereas a lot of top scientists are terrified of being wrong. But if you're terrified of being wrong and you're paid because you have to be wrong, then all that happens is you do really boring conservative stuff.
Well, that's an interesting thing, particularly because you mentioned Stephen Wolfram earlier. One of my good friends picked up a Stephen Wolfram book from the library. It might have been A New Kind of Science or something else. And inside of it was a handwritten note by a mathematician that said, you should read this book with caution because Wolfram is afraid to put this up to peer review. And because he's afraid of that, then we don't actually know whether or not this is true or not, which actually brings up an interesting conundrum for you because you're willing to be wrong and you're inside of the weird ivory tower that is academia, and yet you found a way to be wrong in interesting ways, discover new things, and still fit in the system. How is it that you're able to live and thrive in the giant bureaucracies that are universities and still discover new things?
I can ask really profound, although I'm really rude, I ask really profound questions that people like. I guess I'm not boring. I don't know. I guess academia, it's not that academia is full of boring people. That's not fair. Academia. So let's go back to Stephen Wolfram's point. And then, so Stephen's really interesting. Like, I don't think Stephen's clearly a very talented person, a genius on many levels. I don't think it's my job to call him a genius. I love his work. I love his products. But he's one of those, it's like Craig Venter. Stephen Wolfram and Craig Venter occupy the same kind of niche. They've made themselves money. They've made real products. They understand the real world. But they think they understand something about science, and they're frustrated by the inside and the outside. And the problem is that there are a lot of smart people in the world, and Stephen Wolfram is not the only genius in the world. There are a few others. So what Stephen Wolfram needs to do is say, hey, what do you think of my idea? And the other genius go, nah, I had that idea 5 years ago, don't work. What about that one? Oh, yeah, that's better. And then you have a dialogue. And so if Stephen Wolfram had submitted himself a bit to that process, not entirely, because he's an outlier, he's a contrarian, we need him. But wouldn't it be great if the system would have been allowed to interact with him to some degree, that he would get some feedback and work out when he's wrong, and then improve and make it even better? Because Stephen Wolfram is onto something. He's not right at everything. So what I've tried to do in my science, in the way I do, is I kind of want to, I want to be a contrarian, but I want academia to understand where I'm coming from. So I want to say outrageous things, and then I want to prove why I'm right. Or why I'm wrong, and then move up that scale, because that's what excites me. There's plenty of room for more conventional approaches, and there are many of them. There's room for more wilder ones. There's some of those as well. But I think that, and also the other reason I'm unconventional or able to get away with being unconventional is I'm I started off life being very conventional in chemistry. I did that on purpose to basically get some credibility. And then as soon as I got credibility, I went, batshit crazy. And openly, not because I've suddenly wanted to, believe in astral projections and, I don't know, faster than light travel and aliens living at the bottom of my garden, because I want to understand the limits of our comprehension of reality and ask questions that people think are outrageous. And when they say that's outrageous, I say, well, why? And then they go, oh, well, because I'm not allowed to ask that. I'm like, well, that's not my problem. You're boring. I'm asking it. So I think what we have to do, and what I've tried to do is I guess I'm lucky it sounds odd, right? Because everyone's saying, I'm a minority. I've been affected in this way. I was in the worst school, in the worst class, in the worst place. There was no way I was getting to university, but I was lucky that I had enough awe of the world to say, well, I think I know how that works. Let me ask the question. And my, one or two teachers took pity on me and allowed me to keep asking the questions. I've been doing the same thing now since I have when I was 5, and it seems to work. So that's probably, I don't know, there's plenty of other people that are really talented people in academia, of course, many smarter people than me. They may be not as rude as I am.
Yeah, you keep reminding me of a concept that I learned from Joshca Bach about paper walls. So he gave this talk called Computational Metapsychology, which is a fantastic conversation. And one of the things he talks about, there are certain people out in the world, probably about 6% of the population, that if you were in a Japanese house and there are paper walls there, most everybody would recognize that the paper walls are there and I'm in the living room and you're in the kitchen and that's fine. But there's some people that they just don't see the paper walls, so they walk right through them and they end up in somebody's kitchen and you're like, what in the hell are you doing here? But you need those people. And even though they're ordinarily rude to the point of being ostracized from society, oftentimes those people are pushed out because you're like, if you can't understand the social conventions, then you're not allowed here. So the ability to both walk through paper walls and yet still have people want you to come to their dinner parties, that's a very rare gift.
Yeah, well, still for me, I'm not sure I'm wanted at the dinner parties, but one of my good friends in Glasgow is a physicist. I realized he wouldn't invite me anywhere to speak with his friends. We were pretty good friends. And then he started inviting me, and then he'd introduce me and say, here's Lee, ignore the first sentence and you'll be fine. Because in the first sentence, I would just walk through the paper wall. I'd meet as someone who's an expert in neutron scattering and say, neutrons are boring. Scattering doesn't tell me anything. Why are you doing that? And then, hi, how are you doing? And the person would be so upset that they wouldn't want to talk to me for the rest of the discussion of the dinner or whatever, the conversation. And Miles said, no, ignore the first sentence and pretend you didn't hear it and carry on. And
thanks for checking out this podcast short. If you like this interview, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button and hit that bell so you always get notified about this podcast. And if you're really interested in conversations like this, you may want to consider joining the Articulate Ventures Network. To find out more, go to network.articulate.ventures.